Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
What's going on, Mets fans? And I'm going to warn you right now, this video is going to make you relive one of the most painful moments of this entire disastrous offseason. We need to talk about the Brandon Nimmo trade, and more specifically, why trading Brandon Nimmo was an absolute catastrophe that exemplifies everything wrong with David Stearns and his approach to running this organization. Hit that like button if you're still not over losing Nimmo, and stick around because I'm going to break down exactly why this trade represents everything that's broken about the Mets front office right now. Let me start by asking you a simple question. What is the point of having Steve Cohen as your owner if you're going to operate like you're the Tampa Bay Rays? What is the point of having $14 billion at your disposal if you're going to make roster decisions based on payroll flexibility and financial efficiency? Because that's exactly what the Brandon Nimmo trade was. It was David Stearns looking at a perfectly good player on a reasonable contract and deciding that he needed to create flexibility by moving him. That's small market thinking applied to the richest team in baseball. Brandon Nimmo was everything you want in a core player. Let me lay out exactly what the Mets had in him. He was a homegrown talent who came up through their system. He was a consistent .260 to .270 hitter with an elite on-base percentage consistently above .350. He played center field, which is a premium defensive position. He was durable, playing over 140 games in multiple seasons. He had speed. He had baseball IQ. He understood how to work counts and wear down pitchers, and most importantly, he loved being a Met. Brandon Nimmo signed an 8-year, $162 million extension in December 2022 specifically because he wanted to stay in New York. He could have tested free agency. He could have seen what other teams would offer, but he bet on the Mets. He committed to this organization long term. He took less than he probably could have gotten on the open market because he wanted to be here. And how did the Mets repay that loyalty? They traded him less than 3 years into that extension. Think about what that signals to every other player in baseball. Think about what that tells Francisco Lindor, who signed a massive extension with the Mets. It tells him that even if you do everything right, even if you commit to the organization, even if you produce and represent the team well, the front office will still trade you if they decide they want to go in a different direction. That's not how you build a winning culture. That's how you create distrust and instability. Now, let's talk about the justification for this trade, because that's where it gets really infuriating. David Stearns wanted roster flexibility. He wanted to be able to make other moves. He wanted to shake up the roster and put his own stamp on the team. Those are all ego-driven reasons, not baseball reasons. The Mets didn't need to trade Brandon Nimmo to improve. They needed to add to what they already had, not subtract from it. The return for Nimmo was Marcus Semien and some other pieces from the Rangers. Now, Marcus Semien is a good player. I'm not going to sit here and pretend he's worthless, but let's look at the facts. Semien is 35 years old. He's coming off a season where his numbers were starting to decline. He's moving from shortstop to second base because his range isn't what it used to be. He's got maybe 2 or 3 years of quality production left before age really catches up with him. Meanwhile, Brandon Nimmo is 31 years old and still in his prime. He's got at least 4 or 5 more years of being a productive everyday player. He was under contract for 6 more years at a reasonable average annual value. He filled a position of need for the Mets in center field. Trading him for an older player at a different position makes absolutely no sense if your goal is to win now and sustain success. But here's what I think really happened. David Stearns looked at that Brandon Nimmo contract and saw 8 years and $162 million, and his Milwaukee brain couldn't handle it. In Milwaukee, you don't give out 8-year contracts. You don't commit that much money to one player unless he's a generational talent. So Stearns saw an opportunity to move that contract, and he took it without really thinking through what it meant for the roster. And this is the same pattern we've seen with Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz. Stearns looks at the money first and the player second. He sees a contract that his analytical models tell him is inefficient, and he moves on from the player regardless of what they actually bring to the team. He's so focused on creating the perfect roster on paper that he forgets baseball is played by human beings on a field, not by spreadsheets. Let me also point out what the Mets lost beyond just Brandon Nimmo's on-field production. They lost a leader in the clubhouse. Nimmo was one of the veteran players who set the tone for how the team prepared and competed. They lost a connection to the fan base. Nimmo was beloved by Mets fans. His signature move of sprinting to first base, even on walks, became iconic. Kids loved him. Adults respected him. He was one of the faces of the franchise. They also lost credibility with free agents and with their own players. When you trade a homegrown guy who signed an extension to stay, you're telling the entire baseball world that you don't value loyalty or continuity. You're saying that everything is transactional and nobody is safe. That makes it harder to recruit free agents. It makes it harder to extend your own players. It damages the organizational culture in ways that are hard to quantify, but very real. And for what? What did the Mets actually gain from this trade? They got an aging infielder who might give them 2 good years. They got some financial flexibility that they don't actually need because Steve Cohen has unlimited money. They got the ability to put David Stearns' stamp on the roster, which apparently means making it worse. None of those things are worth trading Brandon Nimmo. Let's talk about the defensive implications too, because this is huge. Center field is one of the most important positions on the field defensively. You need a guy who can cover ground, who has good instincts, who can track down balls in the gap. Brandon Nimmo did all of that. He wasn't a Gold Glove caliber center fielder, but he was solid. He was reliable. He made the plays he needed to make. Now the Mets have to figure out their outfield defense. They probably have to move guys around. They probably have to compromise somewhere else. And all of this is happening because David Stearns decided he didn't want to pay Brandon Nimmo $20 million a year, even though Steve Cohen could pay that amount every single day for the rest of his life and still die as one of the richest people in history. Here's what really kills me about this trade. It wasn't necessary at all. The Mets could have kept Brandon Nimmo and still made any other move they wanted to make. They could have added Marcus Semien if they really wanted him. They could have signed other free agents. They could have made trades for other players. Having Steve Cohen as your owner means you don't have to make these either-or decisions. You can have both. You can keep your core and add to it. But David Stearns doesn't think that way. He's hardwired to make tough choices and trade players before their contracts become burdensome. That's how you survive in a small market. But it's not how you maximize your advantages in a big market. And the result is that the Mets traded away a productive player in his prime for no good reason other than David Stearns' inability to adapt his approach to his current situation. The Brandon Nimmo trade is also symbolic of a larger problem with how Stearns has approached this entire offseason. He's been more focused on putting his stamp on the roster than on actually making the team better. He wants to prove that he's smart and analytical and capable of outsmarting everyone else. So he makes moves that look clever on paper but don't actually improve the team in reality. Trading Nimmo for Semien looks like a savvy move if you're focused on analytics and financial efficiency. Semien has a track record. He's been an all-star. The numbers might suggest he can still produce at a high level for another year or two. But when you actually think about what the Mets needed and what they gave up, it's a terrible trade. They needed youth and continuity and stability. They gave up all of that for an aging veteran who represents the opposite. And you know what's going to happen? Brandon Nimmo is going to go to Texas and be exactly the player he was with the Mets. He's going to hit leadoff. He's going to get on base at an elite level. He's going to play solid defense in center field. He's going to be durable and consistent and productive. And Mets fans are going to watch it happen while Marcus Semien is struggling with the effects of age and declining skills. This trade is going to haunt the Mets for years. It's going to be one of those moves that people look back on and use as an example of how David Stearns didn't understand the job he was hired to do. He was hired to maximize Steve Cohen's resources and build a championship team. Instead, he's been busy making small market trades that create holes in the roster and alienate the fan base. Brandon Nimmo should still be a Met. He wanted to be a Met. He committed to being a Met. The fans loved him. He produced on the field. He did everything you could ask of a player. But David Stearns decided that none of that mattered because the contract didn't fit his analytical models. And now Nimmo is gone, and the Mets are worse for it. So here's what I want from you in the comments. How do you feel about the Brandon Nimmo trade? Do you think it's going to be one of those moves we look back on with massive regret? Are you as frustrated as I am that David Stearns keeps making these unnecessary moves that weaken the roster? Because I'm telling you right now, trading Brandon Nimmo was a disaster. And when the Mets are struggling next season and Nimmo is thriving in Texas, everyone is going to remember that this didn't have to happen. Hit that subscribe button for more Mets content that holds this front office accountable for their decisions. Drop your honest thoughts below. And I'll see you in the next video where we continue breaking down the dysfunction that's costing this organization opportunities to compete for championships with the richest owner in baseball.